Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for Monday, November 15th, 2021. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you, whether you're here on the live on YouTube, if you are here on the replay on any of the platforms that Catalyst Energy is residing these days. That is also BitChute and Odysee for now. Welcome back and thank you for being here. And if this is your first time to this channel, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for stopping by. And when you are finished with this content and you find that it's moving, inspiring, giving you some element of guidance, entertainment even, you can hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It means more than you can possibly know. Unless you are a content creator on these platforms, then you know exactly how much it actually means. And commenting, sharing this content, all of these things, when we interact, it actually does support the work. So thank you. So we'll get right into it for today. It is Monday. How is everybody feeling? We had our moon move through Pisces this weekend. I am real curious to see how people's weekend went. Very revealing. Moon in Pisces, lots of feels, perhaps revelation into some things, perhaps some dissolution into a full experience that maybe had been you had been unaware of, or has been unavailable to you up until recently. Maybe it required a new resonance to be able to interact or interface with this whole new level of awareness. So Moon in Pisces, especially as it met Neptune over the weekend, was the powerful dream state with the Moon in Pisces, even if it wasn't exact at the time that you were sleeping. I mean, you may even found yourself really guided to lay down and sleep at that time too. That's also something that, for me on Saturday, that was, supreme nap time in the middle of the day. And when you take a lot of naps and you break up your sleep schedule, as some of you may already know this, I mean, your lucid dreaming can really be impacted in a positive way and certainly influence it. So I'm curious to see how people are doing, what the weekend was like for you. Happy Monday, Meg. It's good to see you. Heavy feels for sure. I'm glad that Monday's here as well. I mean, how often do we say that? How often are we just actually legitimately, authentically going, man, I'm so glad the weekend's over. That was intense. It was intense. And so I'm glad that people are coming out on the other side of it, perhaps a little bit more ready to take on what's next. So a couple things we'll go over, of course. There's some interesting seismic activity that happened over the weekend into today in some very specific area that I'm going to share with you. And I think that's important because asteroid Ceres is still retrograde right now, moving into a new degree as of this weekend, and things are starting to literally start moving, right? Especially at that level. And so we're going to see some seismic activity that's been very consistent in the last day or so. Maybe you already know about it. Very large earthquakes in Iran, and also in the in longitude, south of Iran, in longitude down closer to the other end of Africa, the southern end of Africa, in the ocean, in the South Indian Ocean. There's a lot of activity right now. And so, we'll get into all those cycles. The eclipse is coming. And I would recommend, based on maybe what you've experienced over the weekend, I know for me, this became a very clear message based on my own astral journeying, my own Pisces moon type of connection in my own personal life. And this has been reinforced and validated in synchronous ways with other people just in the last 24 hours as we approach the eclipse season. So we have the lunar eclipse on Friday. As we approach it, it would be recommended. I would recommend, I'm personally going to participate in this. some measure of cleansing, right? And we would normally do these types of activities with every full moon because we get a full reflection of that which is otherwise hidden or embedded or covered up by a lot more of the conscious awareness and the conscious activity, which is the sun, right? And sun represents our conscious activity and how we express ourselves consciously in this life, in this identity, and in this ego, right? That is really expressed with Aries. Moon in Aries right now, so this kind of corresponds to that in a bit, in a certain way. But I would recommend, as we build up to this eclipse, because there's distortion with the eclipse, because it's not going to necessarily be fully reflected back to us as it normally would, that we take some extra care with this eclipse. And so, not that it is necessarily a bad thing, although I do feel like eclipse season and the window between the two eclipses especially is going to be quite impactful and very intense. I would recommend that as we lead up to take extra care of your vessel. I personally am going to be initiating another round of attunements up until the solar eclipse, which is on December 4th, roughly around that time. I might actually extend it to about the 6th or the 7th. It just seems that even with the eclipse on the new moon on the 4th, there's a couple things that are going to bounce right off of that into the 6th and the 7th. So, which are really important days, especially in terms of the United States, right? The December 7th is Pearl Harbor Day. It's the day that we officially entered World War II. So it's very laden with a lot of symbolism that we have every year because of the moon moving into Sagittarius at that point, but also too that it's just, there's a lot going on at that time. So I'm initiating my own practice. So doubling up on my attunements, master attunement and healing attunement every day for the next 21 days roughly. But also too, I would, so whatever it is, right? Whatever your practice is, this is a great time. This is a really great time to start initiating it if you haven't yet. And fasting. I'm going to fast up to at the full moon eclipse. So Thursday night into Friday, I'm going to go on a fast. It'll just be tea and water, no food, and probably fasting from some other things. I'm sure we will do the astrology reading for that day. I might fixate it on signs rather than just the generalized astrology. I'm going to see how that works. I'm curious to see how that goes over, right? Do more of a horoscope type of stream on Fridays instead of just the generalized astrology. I'm curious to see how that goes. But this is a great time to initiate some sort of cleansing practice and really taking extra care. And something to consider about full moons, especially full moon eclipses, they are high ritual time. And so one of the ways that we can counteract some of the practices that are counter to our own sense of integrity and respect for all life, right? So that's the sacrifice that often will accompany full moon eclipses in terms of ritual magic. One way that we can counterbalance that with light is to offer a sacrifice of ourselves in some way, which is why fasting is so impactful at this time. So whatever way is comfortable and you can, weave into your life, the assimilation that we're going to talk about today I think would be a really useful tool leading up to this time. So whatever it is, and if you need ideas, if you want to problem solve, maybe get some suggestions, you can always reach out to me. My email for Catalyst Energies is in the description box below, and I can give you, we can build something that works for you very specifically. So, but I really would take care of your vessel and put some extra energy into what you can do to give of yourself and to purify yourself and to accept that not everything's going to be made aware to you right away with this, all of us really. And it's not to say that there won't be this release down the road, because oh boy, it will. And I cannot wait to give the eclipse report. I'm working on it right now, and it's going to be coming very soon. The eclipse report for the next 6 months. And finally, able to offer the reading sale. So $99, you'll get your 90 minutes of the next 6 months. What are the big themes? What areas of your life is the eclipse going to impact? So there'll be a flyer and an email coming today or tomorrow to offer this officially. So it's important that we are taking the time, like the real time. And it's very easy to get fixated again on what's happening out there, and not to say that we shouldn't pay attention and be aware, but this is going to be a whole new level, I think, and feel. And my own experiences led me to preparing myself for this whole new level of manipulation and the attempts to swing our attention and our conscious focus and awareness into a certain direction as a mitigation factor. And with eclipses, there is distortion. And so it's built into the framework of this time. And so again, whatever it is that you feel called to do, it's important that it's consistent and that it gives something of yourself if you really want to counterbalance that which would normally, and no doubt is going to be offered up in terms of a inverted perspective of this time. And it has a lot to do with the Pleiadian revival. And even today in the astrology, we're getting a very dark, deep, and I'm not saying dark in an evil or negative way. This is much more about an unseen darkness, occulted aspect of our connection to the planet, our connection to life, our connection to the feminine. It's very there's a timestamp today that we'll go into for not only this eclipse, but when the nodes pass over the eclipse point in the spring. And I just can't wait to give the report for the eclipse. It's actually very favorable. There's so much support coming our way. It's really, really... it's just really cool, and it feels really good. But we have some things to go through, and it's going to challenge so many people, and there are many of us that it's time to step into what we're here to do, because we did volunteer to be here for this process. So we're gonna look at the I want to show you the earthquake stuff, because I think that's really, really important to see how there are some very physical aspects that are starting to shift around that are coinciding with, what is shifting around energetically. They're inseparable, right? And then we'll go into preparing ourselves to receive the intuitive message, the intuitive part of the transmission, and then we'll look at the astrology. So just going to check in with the stream real quick and see. Yeah, big revelations for you, Emily. We had a conversation about that. I think we can safely say that we both had some pretty crazy experiences this weekend. So big revelations. Now the challenge is to be able to apply that. And there is some really powerful astrology today with the sun in a square to Jupiter that's going to keep us in our lane and kind of give us some structure in order to really make the most of this without letting ourselves get in the way, if that makes sense. So I want to show you. Let's move into this minimized version of my face. And I want to start showing you, well, here's our chart for today, but we're going to look at these earthquakes. So I'm going to reboot this page or reload this page, refresh it real quick. So one thing I'm going to mention here as we go through this and look at this is that when we get to the part about the earthquakes in Iran, and they've been consistent now since yesterday, yesterday midday or even Saturday. Definitely yesterday, though, it does seem they were rated a lot higher on the seismicity or the magnitude than they are now being shown on this chart. And I'm curious about that, why they were recoded, rebranded, why they went back and redid the magnitude. Maybe they realized that it was less powerful than it was initially measured. I'm not sure how that works. But the reason I want to show this to you is because I want to show you that things are starting to really activate, especially along a specific longitude. And considering how eclipse season is traditionally and there's a correlation, right? There's a measurable correlation, at least observably. And I don't know if there is research yet that's making actual analyzed data that's making the correlation, but we can observe it, is that there are connections between seismic activity, tectonic shifting, and eclipses, right? So, when the moon is in the way of the sun directly, it does impact how we receive the magnetic field from the sun, and it has an impact on the magnetics. And we know from the Schumann resonance, we're watching that ourselves right now. And you can do research on this as well. There are other places where you can find this information, but just on a very basic level, we've watched the connection between massive seismic activity and really drastic shifts in the Schumann resonance. So we already, just from our own research, just our own observations on this channel, we know there's a connection. And so in terms of the electromagnetic waves and electrical circuitry in the atmosphere and in the planet that is connected to seismicity, it's there, right? And there is research that is starting to trickle out over time. And I think that the reason it takes so long, because science takes a long time, right? Because you have to go through a large process, but also too that there's something that about this that is not really there. It's suppressed, right? And when you it's my understanding, when you try to offer information or try to actually address the electrical circuitry in relation to seismic activity and the Schumann resonance, it's really pushed back against. So that's something to consider as well. Why not actually study this? Anyway. So what we're going to look at here is these 2 points right here, because this is the point where there have been significant seismic activity in Iran. So you're looking very close actually to where it is near the Gulf, right? And it was felt in Dubai, which is over here, kind of like on this point, of course. But these are the big earthquakes. Now, they did register yesterday over 6 in the magnitude, and they've downgraded it since then. So I want to pull back out because I want to show you the other ones that are really big. You can see them. I have them by magnitude first in the last day or so. And it's starting with the 6, but this here, right? The South Indian Ocean, right? This is the Indian Ocean right here. South Indian Ocean, there is also big earthquake. So if we look at it right here, this is today, the 14th. These are over here on the Pacific Rim, but look, there's another one, and here's the ones in Iran. So 5.2, 5.2, and then if we keep going, that was today. That was just on the 15th. So we also see, if we go down, this was the 14th, and these listed much bigger yesterday, over 6. So I'm not sure, again, why they downgraded it, but here's the ones in Iran. Here's another one, 4.6. This is on the 14th. So you just go down and down, and here's another one on the 15th. That just happened today, another one. So you can see that they're at the same longitude, don't we? So my guess is that we're looking at some sort of massive energetic line or magnetic line, electrical line in terms of the circuitry of the planet. There's something very disturbed and something that is getting impacted. It's being influenced electrically and magnetically, and it's also potentially being influenced at a seismic level, obviously at a seismic level, but energetically, all of those things along this line that have just been really, really active. So you can search the news for these earthquakes in Iran over the weekend because they are in the news, and they continue because they keep having these quakes as of this morning. So something is moving. Now, people from the 1111 portal, let's go back here for a minute. Where am I? Yes. We go back. Sorry, guys. So I'm going to bring up the reading in a second. So, but if we go back to the 1111 portal, you know, people are claiming that there is a shift, right? And I wouldn't even call it a shift as much as a blasting open, right? And people have been, you know, since 1111, right? And over the weekend when the moon has been in, there's somebody coming to my door. That's really frustrating. Anyway, because they don't know. Anyway, I can see everything from my office, right? I got this view. Sorry, guys, that was really distracting because they just walked right in front of me and they're probably going to knock on my door. So anyway, we'll get to this. We're going to settle ourselves so that we can take in this transmission for a minute. So, but the 1111, the gateway, and it's still open, see, and it blasted open. So yes, there's a shift, but what happened was that there was a big opening. And something that came up in my own research over the weekend, whether or not you believe this, you think it's true, it doesn't matter. It's just an interesting idea that apparently there was some technology in Antarctica. And the reason this is important, because this is where the path of totality of the eclipse is, over Antarctica, okay, on the 4th. So the Antarctica, somebody had posted, this was in 2018, that on 11/11 in 2018, there was some type of technology that was initiated and activated in Antarctica on 11/11/2018. And I do get the sense that perhaps we are getting a big like time ripple from that event, whatever it is. I think it might be some looking glass technology, but that's just my personal opinion. But what I do sense is that if that's the case, there was something very big that kind of opened very large, and we are getting a ripple right now, like a big one, like a ultrasound that came through, this massive wave that came through and just like dilated this portal of 11/11, maybe bigger than it otherwise would have been, who knows, but it seemed like it opened very large, and we're getting a lot of what we need to then move through this time frame with the eclipses, specifically between the eclipses, the full moon and the new moon solar eclipse, because there's something about this time frame in the next 2 weeks, 2 plus actually 3 weeks, which is why I'm starting these attunements, that is going to really put us to the test in some ways, and really work very hard to, I would say, cloud our vision. And when Neptune stations direct on the 1st of December, before the eclipses, it's going to station and come to a standstill and then start moving direct around the time of the new moon itself, of the eclipse. And when that happens, when Neptune stations direct, yes, it's incredibly powerful, and really does, the dissolution is going to start happening outside of us. Whereas with the retrograde, it's been a lot of this internalized experience. And so with the moon crossing Neptune over the weekend, with the 11/11 being blasted open, perhaps even a time wave from something that happened 3 years ago, it is now providing, it's like we are able, not only did we step through that Sphinx gate of the portal, but now we're looking at ourselves in the mirror and getting a very clear view, or even into, I don't want to say the crystal ball, but we're getting a very strong sense of what it is we need to actually be doing to ground ourselves and to be prepared for the next level of psychological manipulation, the next level of what I would say is the surfacing of that which is usually below, and within us, perhaps distorted, right? Because that's where the moon will be for the eclipse. But on the outside and in our expression, with the moon not being, with the sun in Scorpio, with our expression, it's going to be very loud indeed. And until we see fully within us what it is we need to release and cleanse away, it will be, the loudness of it could very well be kind of like, oh my God. And I mean, look at this reading for today, as we'll get ready here in a minute to just, do our grounding exercise and taking our deep breath, is that we have a tower moment on its way here, and everything else in this reading, every single thing else except for the animals, which are never inverted, everything's reversed. And when I did this reading this morning, I was in a state of, there's a lot of light here with us and nearby and ready to assist in any way possible, and we've been given many insights very recently that is going to be very important that we employ them in some way. And that we cannot dissipate our energy, and we cannot be, lost in a fantasy. And even if we are, the tower is still coming, whatever that represents for each of us in our own lives or in our experience, out there in the external. It's going to be very powerful. So let's take a minute here to do our deep diaphragmatic breath, and I'm going to bring our resonance into alignment here with our root chakra and each other and the earth, because today is a huge Lyran starseed activation, and that is very correspondent to our root chakra and our sense of security in life and who we are. So deep diaphragmatic breath in. Remember, we are fanning out and down with our diaphragm to open our lungs and allow the air to come in from the bottom up. So deep breath in. Release. And on that out breath, you just want to relax the diaphragm. You want it to naturally expel the air from your lungs, right? Naturally. And you can take a longer time if you're trying to control your breathing. So on the in breath, you can do a count of 4 or whatever, but 4 or 5, whatever works for you. And the out breath, you want to double it, right? To really be able to control your breathing and to allow your lungs to clear out entirely. We want all that carbon dioxide, right? Your lungs are filtering so much for us. All of us, our lungs are filtering, and we want to release that which is meant to be released through the breath. So whatever energetically and physically, emotionally can all come out with the breath and strengthen our field. So let's get right into this, shall we? Because we have some challenging energy to work with. I'm popping over to the chat one more time before we go into this. The blasting open of the 11th was bringing up more stuff from my subconscious, like an earthquake, almost like a shift in time, so I had to readjust. Wow, those are all really relevant representations and symbols, right? There is an earthquake. It did burst open, and it was a massive shift in time. Definitely felt like a shift in time now that I'm sitting with this. I almost felt like it just was timeless, almost like I felt popped out of time in these moments, and tapping into deeper aspects of ourselves that we didn't know even existed, and looking at things in a different way. Now, that's part of the Chiron transit too. We'll get into that. Oh man, thank you for your insight and your comments. It really does help all of us to know what we're all experiencing. So our causal factor coming into this moment, the 2 of Cups is a beautiful card. Just looking at it is beautiful. The Venus in Cancer, right? Love, but it's differentiated. It's that first moment of separation in polarity, either in our relationships, in anything of value to us, in harmony even. It's the idea that for us to come back into union with God, with source, with our own higher self, or anybody, right? Our most valued relationships that really allow us to be more of who we are. They initially, you have to separate, right? Differentiation is a big part of this. And the thing about the Cancer archetype that's really important to wrap your head around is, yes, it's very sensitive. Yes, it's about getting into the deeper and inner life. Yes, it is allows for a very strong psychic intuitive channel, but it's also about protection. It's also about a very distinct differentiation, right? With Cancer, there is a boundary between yourself and your family, your traditions, and those that are not. That is what's shown with the shell of the crab, which is the Cancer archetype, is the crab, right? Ultimately, and the constellation itself is the crab. There is a distinction, and the part of Cancer that has to do with boundaries is you cannot really address who you are. You cannot work on integrating your personality without some recognition that there is a differentiation between ourselves and other. And it doesn't have to be necessarily something that denotes that there is any kind of division that is meant to, or resistance, but part of the individuation process that allows us to come back to source in the first place is this experience of self and other. And in the Cancerian archetype, it is, in fact, the best way to wrap your mind around this is the difference between the mother and the child in utero. The womb is the protective covering, and it is protecting the fetus, but it also protects and differentiates between the mother as the protector and the carrier, and as the growing life within. So there needs to be a boundary and a differentiation for this process to even happen. So the Two of Cups is that first moment of differentiation where we have a direction to focus on. So and a very material person or direction, because we're talking about Venus. So this is in and of itself such a lovely energy. So when it's reversed, it can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that our energy is being dissipated rather than being focused. It can mean that we're wasting our love and our energy on something that is not actually an equal but different, an equal but differentiated source, right? There's something that's out of balance with it when it's reversed, right? These inversion. And so the Two of Cups needs to have a goal outside of itself in order to really be fully expressed. So the differentiation in this reversal could also be an internalized experience of this love, that we are feeling the differentiation with the separation within us. Now, with Venus in Capricorn and meeting the first of 4 different Lyran activations during, I would many more actually, now that we're talking about it, because Venus is going to be retrograde in Capricorn. So there's going to be multiple activations of the Lyran star seeds in a very materially based way. When I say material, it's running the gamut of our actual physical nature, our material life, our house, our resources, our relationships, the projects we're working on, our physical currency, what we have. And then with Libra, with Venus being the ruler of Libra, we do have to take into account that also means that we are dealing with the balance of those things, and symmetry and harmony, and a sense of things being aesthetically balanced and pleasing to the eye. That's another part of Libra. So with all of these Lyran activations of Venus, we're going to have to start coming to an awareness of not dissipating our energy at all. And in fact, we're going to have to really apply it to something more than just our personal lives. And that's a lot harder to do because it's so much easier to experience this love, even in differentiation, when we're in our personal life, right? Cancer really is our personal life. It is the most intimate part of our lives. It's the container of the family. It's the container of the, the feeling-based identity that where we belong, right? And who we're loyal and faithful to. Now with Venus, like I said, with this card reversed, and we have to consider Venus in Capricorn right now, and start to take some responsibility for something a little bit more outside of what is on our immediate environment. And also, too, a dissipation of energy, wasting our energy. And when we come into the heart of the moment, so this is our causal factor. So maybe even, too, like a splitting up, right? This could be very easily experience this way, an actual breakup, a splitting up, a splitting apart of love. And we've talked about this many times because the art of the alchemy has also been brought about many times in the last week or so in terms of this fission and this splitting apart. But this is very emotionally based, and it's very hurtful. And it really has an actual impact on how we feel about ourselves when there's a splitting apart as well. So there's a couple ways to look at it, but there's a very distinct sense of a separation, and not in a good way, right? It's separation in a good way when it's upright like this, but in its reversal, there's something inverted about it, and it's a waste. There's wasteful energy, or we're feeling that differentiation within ourselves. But with Venus and Capricorn right now, I really am drawn to read this as it's got to be more. We are really drawn to our personal lives being much more impacting the whole, right? Because Capricorn really is the whole, and it's the whole of the society, not just our personal lives and our immediate family and where that's expressing itself, but something much bigger than that. So in the heart of the matter, here we have the Princess of Cups. So first we have Venus in Cancer, and now we have Venus in the water signs entirely. So again, Venus is in Capricorn. Now there is a lot of water right now because we have all the Scorpio, we have Neptune in Pisces, Pallas, Athena is in Pisces. We're going to see that Venus today is in a sextile to Pallas Athena, both in Lyran starseed activation. So again, there's going to be something here that it has to be something more cohesive, something that is larger than just us or our personal life or how we feel, that we have to start addressing. And knowing that how we feel and what goes on in our personal, intimate, inner life does impact the whole. We have to really start accepting this. And I know that many of us are, and that's what we're doing. All of our work is to really have the impact on the larger matrix of reality based on how we are doing our work. Now it's becoming very, this reading is if that is not happening. Also too, and it's showing that it's a natural progression into that anyway. So even if we're fighting against it and we really are trying to keep ourselves focused on what's right in front of me, and we should be doing that, but not actually seeing how it impacts the whole or how we have to start taking responsibility for what's going on in the larger context. This is showing us that it's not going to last much longer. With the Tower moment, it's pretty obvious. So also, too, the Princess of Cups, when it's reversed, Venus in the water signs, this is, again, it's kind of living in fantasy land, and castles made of sand, right? And so when we're talking about court cards, they are in reference to actual people. So here we are feeling in our hearts right now that we could be sinking in the seas of irrationality. This could be some selfishness. And again, right, Venus wants to feel comfortable, right? Venus is about her feeling comfortable and secure and what appeases her senses. And she represents that part of ourselves, which is a natural part of ourselves. And there's something to be said for that. And there's also specific ways that we can go about managing that. And that has that matters, right? And so here at the center, though, we are, already it's very dreamy and very kind and unconditionally loving. It's like an island out in the ocean with the Princess of Cups. So when it's reversed, I mean, we could be really pushing away reality here, and really very much. It also could be, again, that we are starting to really address what it means to be part of the whole and what our participation is in an internalized way. But this also says that, as we've collectively dissipated energy, maybe wasted our energy, perhaps not taking responsibility for how we interact with the whole, this leads us to a point where we're actually like feeding that even more. And there is something very powerful about taking responsibility for what we're collectively creating, because it requires a certain amount of leadership. It requires ambition. It requires a certain amount of fearlessness. And you're not getting that with these two, with Venus in the water signs in general. It's very much about the feels. And we did have the moon in Pisces, all about the feels. Deep feels, maybe uncomfortable feels. There's a lot of that that's coming through in this reading right now. But it also showing that if we have just been wasting our energy on how we feel, and we find ourselves kind of, really feeding that within ourselves, and feeding that kind of luxuriousness and abuse of these feelings, and not taking responsibility for how it's like maybe, having an impact on the whole. This is, it's going to be a rough tower moment. And I think that where we find ourselves moving to this very radical adjustment that is, Uranus and Saturn in particular, when we talk about the tower, and we will talk about the tower, is that, Uranus and Taurus, I mean, we do have to still acknowledge the baggage we can't take with us. And part of that is that we've really indulged this bifurcation plenty. And we are moving into the time where there's no more of that now, right? That separation is going to devolve in some ways back into a very clear and very feeling-based, value-based set of karmic experiences, and at a soul level of where we're headed. So there's a lot of, I felt a lot of love and a lot of support and a lot of pep talk and God being very close this morning when I pulled these cards. And so I'm kind of just like, what is going on here? But I know it's because we are about to embark on something very intense. And that is why there's so much surrounding us right now, and to get us back on track. So, and there's squares today. There are Pleiadian squares today when we get into the astrology that are really in, keeping us in our lane, keeping us disciplined to a certain extent. Okay. So, when we move into, this is so beautiful, right? And so is this. It seems like, oh, this is all great. Like, we want these things. They're soft and flowing and dreamy and imaginative. But remember, the moon's in Aries right now too, by the way. So, and these are both reversed. There is something here that it's not that they're not important, but they have to be applied to something significantly physical. Right? Physical in order to get the most out of them. And if we're not doing that, then this tower moment is going to readjust things very drastically. And I think that that's coming anyway. And we have a responsibility as starseeds and light workers and wanderers and pilgrims and, people here for the awakening, that we have to be ready to hold maybe more than we want. But we've been given lots of insight into what we need to shore up in order to do that. I know it's getting exhausting, but I think we're all kind of like it's like we're all, when I say we all, I'm meaning the starseeds in particular. I do feel like that we are actually we're getting so much stronger because of the heavy lifting. So the divine physician at the root energetically here, I think this is the energetic polarity is where really I think the tower moment is leading us, is coming from, is this inversion in a lot of this this energetic polarity. So the divine physician is nothing less than that healing master within each of us, right? You can see he's got the caduceus. It's got a lot of the Jesus aspect to it, which is, you know, the divine physician is very connected to Virgo, my friends. We got a 6 for, you know, which is that 6th house of, you know, the Virgo house. It is, but it requires, again, an incredible amount of mastery and discipline to get to this point where you're doing this. This is why a lot of people really struggle with like people who are Reiki practitioners. And I get it. You know, I've practiced for so long that I understand why there's just kind of like a negative, there's definitely a negative bias in certain aspects of this, you know, like in terms of energy healers, that you can pretty much get attuned and then go out and just start working with people and take money without any like real work to manage that space. We can talk about that at another time, but what I'm bringing up here is that it does require a level of mastery to get to this point. And again, it's reversed. And so there is a slip. We are slipping. Somebody's slipping, and they are certainly not anchored into this energetic healing aspect. So losing sight of what's required for our self-care and healing. This is why I really mentioned how important it is to whatever you're anything. Just pick something and stick with it and have it be focused on a real cleansing, purifying type of experience leading up to the eclipse, because I think it's going to be really important. We've gotten sidetracked, perhaps, forgotten the power of our thoughts and emotions. Again, this is why pulling us back into the bifurcation, pulling us back into the division nature. This is why it's important, if you're an Orion starseed, that you are really clear about that with yourself, because this is some of the biggest energy that is, you know, perpetuating it too. And so Orion starseeds have a really strong they have a lot of responsibility on their plate in terms of being able to love this duality and make the most out of it without it turning into a control thing. So we've lost sight collectively. We need to really get ourselves back on the healing self-care track and really remind ourselves or refamiliarize ourselves at a very deep level of what it is that allows for us to actually heal, which is energetic. Okay. And so again, there's that Earth Star chakra, really important to plug into. Maybe that's your daily practice. You spend 5 minutes in meditation first thing in the morning. And while you're doing your deep breathing, you're also visualizing connecting into your Earth Star chakra. That's a really easy thing to do. Not easy to stay focused, but the practice itself is where you get better. So, but I do feel like here we are losing sight of what collectively of what is required. And the 1111 gateway really did blast us open. So we have to take advantage of it while we can right now. I can't wait. And the astrology today there's some really strong starseed activations to help us, to get us on track, or to put us back in our lane. Okay, so where we find ourselves releasing, again, our attention and our focus is definitely dissipating. And here's another court card of the emotional, spiritual feeling variety here. So the King of Roses, again, us or somebody in our life, right? This is another way this is expressed. Disruption with the relationship with a man in our life. Maybe we're the man in the life, or our masculine is being really overturned in some way. It's important that we allow ourselves to step into what is new. Don't allow ourselves to get swept away in the feeling of it. And remember that tower, okay? There's a potential for a new beginning when we let go of the attachment to an old love, an old way of being. Whoa, I'm getting incredible deja vu right now, okay? And a very strong message. So this is about a role that we're playing for ourselves. We need to be willing to let go of the attachment of an old love. And it's very much about a role that we're playing. Oh, I'm getting so emotional. Time to create a pattern of true self-care. Again, this is coming back around, but it's requiring us to let go of something we really loved about ourselves or a person or a part of ourselves. And it's run its course now. It's run its course. Now you can start to see the two of cups being overturned and us being kind of in fantasy land about it, maybe still trying so desperately to hold on to it, and just thinking if we just give enough and if we are just open and flowing enough, we'll just be able to hold on to it. And it's just dissolving right in front of our eyes. And this is where our attention is on the disruption itself within us as actual personalities or in somebody in our life. So it's important that we take control of our perception of our higher self, right? Get into the rooted nature of healing, of really divine healing, spiritual healing, whatever that is for us. And it's okay to let this go. And it's okay to feel things about it too, because it's time to go on a new adventure. And this is old and stale, even though we've had a lot of love for this role, whatever this role was for us. And this is where our attention really is right now, is on this. And there's some incredible guidance coming through to help with this. Man, that was really, really intense. I'm wondering if anybody else felt that surge, or if it was just me. So we we come into our effect of our cause and effect relationship. We come into our likely outcome of this narrative, which is our tower moment, right? The tower, Mars, is the initiate of, or the initiator, right? He's the agent. Mars is the agent of the tower, right? The destruction that leads to sudden realizations, that creates the space for something new. And this is the only thing that's upright in this reading. So we know that, even all of this inversion, all of this like flipping around, perhaps we are being really strongly impacted by this time ripple that's coming through. This is saying that the area of relative security is starting to waver and it gets knocked over. So getting rid of obsolete loads. Again, this is exactly where Uranus is right now in Taurus, very much about what it is about the ambition in a material way that is baggage to our soul and to our journey through our awakening process and into new earth. Sudden realization of truth is here, and it's to recreate life and start something new, right? And this is so tied in to the eclipse, the full moon eclipse, the lunar eclipse, especially where the moon will be. The eclipsed moon is very tied into the acceptance and the mature growth of coming into the crone cycle, which is a natural part of the feminine cycle or the female cycle. Is the crone, right? The wisdom and the potential for a new beginning, even though something very distinctly is now finding its way into the underworld or being let go of. This is very powerful, and it's going to be very sudden realization of truth. And it's always disruptive with the tower. Now, something to consider is that in the next day or so, the moon will move into Taurus, which means the moon is going to meet Uranus in Taurus. So keep in mind that this is also too very likely emotional. We'll have a very emotionally connected experience to what this is in the next day or so. And it's, getting in contact with our self-care and letting go of that which really needs to be released in terms of actual people, roles that we've been playing. And this is very, very powerful, and it's going to be very difficult. It's just for people who aren't like 100% in their higher self as much as they can be on a daily basis as they integrate into 3D life. This will be very difficult. It's going to be hard for everybody, I think. Not doom and gloom, though. Man, there's just so many beings surrounding us. I mean, they're coming through even like almost physically. Like I can feel the brushes against me in my meditation and in my prayer. You know what I mean? That the physical, and that happens sometimes when I do energy work for other people. Their guides come in and I get very physical, palpable experiences. And so they're coming through very strongly right now. So there's some really good guidance, guys, for this today, and some new things. Now, the Four of Scrolls is about our karmic trench, right? We see this individual going in and just digging and digging and digging instead of moving to the next lane and then the next lane and preparing for new growth, right? This is about planting seeds. This is getting trapped in that trench. Now, when it's reversed, as we see in our reading, this is actually a really good sign that we've fallen out of the trench. And so when it comes to this divine physician, right, what do we need to do to get back on track? It's really as simple at this point as realize that the sudden changes in your life are knocking you out of karmic patterns, and they are coming, and they've already been here for a lot of people. Many people are pre-waving this, or whoa, I'm just getting a huge ringing in my ear, like really, really so strong. Okay, it's gone now. Wow, man, I'm getting all kinds of information today in this reading, like live. It doesn't always happen like this. So this is knocking us out of our karmic patterns, and the sudden changes in our life are doing that. And sometimes we need a swift kick in the ass to do that, especially if we've been ignoring ourselves, which again, this divine physician in this position really does suggest that there has been collectively still kind of an avoidance of doing this work or coming into alignment with this part of ourselves or our own healing in general. But this is a good thing that we're getting knocked out of our karmic pattern. So we have to be aware of that so that we don't reinstate it, right? It's very easy to fall right back into that trench because it's familiar territory, because it's really deep. It's right next to where we were digging. And if you've been down there long enough, you don't even realize that you're out of the trench right away. And you might find yourself going right back in because of the neural pathways in our mind, of our thoughts, right? This is about where our focus is and where our energy is. And we have to be mindful that there's another one, it's coming through again. That hardly ever happens. Same tone. I'm curious what the Schumann is doing right now. Oh yeah, it almost feels like a divorce. Oh my. Sorry, I just had to pop over and see what people are saying. Yes, it does. It feels like a divorce from a part of ourselves that has been needing to go for a long time. And it's only now that we've gotten, it's almost like since 2018, to be perfectly honest, this part of ourselves. Now it's just not going away. The ringing is just staying here in my right ear. So, people look at this ringing in different ways. Some people feel like that they're getting downloads or input. In other ways, it could be a little bit more nefarious, right? That we're just, there are actual signals being emitted through the Schumann, which is really scary to me, but it also underscores how important it is that we are really taking our role seriously, because how easily influenced we actually are. But I do feel like it can be both, right? It definitely can be both. So this is knocking us out of our karmic patterns. Sorry, I keep getting pulled off track. And the sudden changes in our life are allowing us to break these patterns. And so we do have the resources to plant the seeds that bring a new cycle, right? We do have them. I mean, the divine physician is still here. We have them. We just have to actually see that's what's happening is knocking us out of these unhealthy patterns. And the ladybug that's involved here as well in this guidance that's surrounding us is it's saying it's a time of good fortune and abundance. So be willing to receive, right? We have to be open, but discerning in our openness. I cannot stress this enough, how important it is that we are discerning. And we really, really need to take this seriously, because we could be so open, so much more open than we've ever been right now to influence that we don't want. But we also don't want to close ourselves off from fortune and abundance. And that became, that was very, I'm getting all kinds of signals. So also too, like being able to know the difference is really important as well. So be willing to receive the good things in your life. You have to actually make space for those things. And that's, all of the disruption that's coming through is again, in order to do that. So if your perspective, right, your focus on what is being disrupted is actually received with this gratitude that you are stepping into a new part of yourself, then yes, then this eclipse time is as difficult as it may be for some people. Some people might just go on without a blip, who knows? But I would say that I'm not getting that sense at all. But if you see it from the perspective that you are receiving abundance and you're receiving good fortune by having these things leave your life, or these aspects leaving you, then you will receive, and you have to be open to receiving it. And the 1111 portal went, it was a huge dilation like this. It just massively opened so much when it happened. So we have to be willing to receive. And we've talked about this many times, right? To make sure that the space is conducive to receiving, and our perspective as well, that we see it as a time of fortune and abundance to take in what is being offered. And it very much is being offered. There's so much support being offered. Now, this guy hasn't come up hardly at all. This is good time to go on a new adventure, especially when it comes to, if this is an actual relationship that's going away, or there's a part of yourself that you really need to put out to pasture in some ways, right? If you have to let go of a part of yourself that it's time to let go of, but you're having all the feels and emotionally attached to it. This is one way to think about it, right? Time to go on a new adventure, time to move in a new direction. Maybe it's time for that wandering pilgrimage that is so it's just so illuminating a lot of times. And so you can, there's a lot of different ways that this can come about. But I would say that if you can, again, look at how what's leaving your life is actually creating space for something so wonderful to come in, then you can see it as an adventure, right? It's time to go on a new adventure, whatever that is for you. That's something very powerful. And again, it's time to leave the political conflict behind, right? And I see so many people, and this is not to say that you should or shouldn't be focused on it. I'm just observing that what I see is still kind of caught in the division, right? And the bifurcation aspect is going to be out of our awareness very soon, especially when the North Node, especially once it reaches within a degree of Alcyon and then moves into Taurus. I mean, this will not be the trajectory at a soul level anymore in terms of where we are meant to grow. This had its place, right? It definitely had its place and taught us so much. And there was a reason that we were engaged with the division and the dialectic. It was important to see it for what it was. It was important to master this realm, because mastering this realm is completely different than actually feeding it, right? Feeding the division, playing the chess game. And there's nothing wrong with chess. I love chess, right? And you get better at strategizing your own life and in your own, career, in your own destiny, your mission, whatever, right? Because the chessboard really is the fractal geometry of life in this universe, at least in this density, third density. But it's time to walk away. It's time to walk away from the conflict. And so many people have so much invested in this part of themselves that has to do with this, right? And it's just time to move away from it because it's untenable now. There's no winning. All it does is siphon the energy away from us, and it's important that we realize that we're about to step into a whole different realm. Like we're about to just uproot. It's just like flip the chessboard over, like because we're just the pawns on there anyway. There might be a couple of us that are actually more of like, the rooks or the bishops, but nobody that we need to be done with this. And so however this manifests in your actual life, it's untenable now. It's time to be done with it. And it's time to walk away. And it's time to go on a new adventure, right? You're trapped on this chessboard. You can't go anywhere new. So, but this, again, requires that we are willing to see this really sudden disruption, or maybe it's already happened. But of course, we're seeing here that it's likely to be in our immediate future. We'll see that it's actually working for us. And setting us up to set down new roots. But the emotional aspect, I feel like that there is a sense of wanting to hold on to something, or a sense that we are really emotionally struggling and really we've not fully attached to our own healing capacity right at this moment. And so that we're just kind of really lost in the watery aspect of things. And that's going to change. I mean, that's going to change as soon as this tower moment is just like, it's the dragon coming through. So that's very powerful reading. And it's not often that I get these types of live stream downloads or signals, or whatever you want to call them. Wow. Oh, dude, I know exactly. Oh, man. I'm so glad that you guys are interacting, because this is a really, feeling the divorce too, that relates to my accepting my crone role, letting go of old illusions and a certain amount of vanity. Letting go specifically of a romantic attachment to me. They also had to discourage, but tough, because I cared, but it wasn't right. Oh yeah. Yep. Totally. And those people that come into our lives, they were right for something, right? They were right for something. And it's not to say that those relationships aren't valid unless they taught us something about ourselves, but that's kind of what relationships are for, right? Well, again, we're playing this out in many ways. This is incredible. Oh man, Alex K, wow. The overlaps with you in particular have been so striking. Thank you for sharing with everybody your experiences, because it's you're really in it right now. And you have a lot to share and teach people as well. So let's move on to the astrology. Oh my Lord, because I'm like buzzing over here. Not to say I won't be buzzing with I even closed the wrong file. Hold on guys, we'll get into it 1 second here so that we can see our chart here. Wow. Okay, so we're going to close this out. Thank you for being part of that. Thank you for grounding yourself and preparing yourself for this moment. So we'll look at that one in a second. We're going to look at the current transits as they are. Our moon is in Aries, so there is this sense of refresh and renewal and new, and the new growth, right? The new growth. So we're feeling it. We're feeling that potential within us, right? And we know how it is with the moon in Aries. There's always the potential for some really fiery feelings. And of course, there's our tower moment with the moon in Aries. So the moon in Aries is well past Chiron at this point, but we will go back. I wouldn't say well past, but a few hours past Chiron. So, Venus was in a square to Chiron. These are strong Lyran activations today. So we're really being tested and brought to task, I think, in terms of our fearlessness, our ambition to really bring something into a form, our ambition to trust ourselves, to trust the universe, to be in alignment with the universe in a very material way. When I say material, it means the nuts and bolts of third density life, 3D life, actually 3D life specifically, because you can be in fourth density and even fifth density while you're in a third dimensional body. That's kind of the whole point of us right now, is to do this. 1 second. So, but moon in Aries, there's always the possibility of breathing fire, of course, and we may find ourselves in that position today, or being on the other end of it, or just bearing witness to it, especially with the moon meeting Chiron today too. So the real challenge now is to keep the eyes on the prize, right? And especially in terms of who we are. Be able to see the full picture of who we are, not get caught up on the details or get caught up in the triggers about who we have been. Letting those things go and seeing the full picture, right? Being able to look into the crystal and see ourselves in our fullness, rather than getting pulled into the direction of that which is the wound, right? And how we identify with that part of ourselves. That's the essence of Chiron, okay? So we'll go back in time here and look at the moon transits and then kind of draw some attention to some of the larger things, especially again where some of the asteroids are. We have a sun in a square to Jupiter today. That's a really strong Pleiadian activation, in a way that is both sides of it not very resonant with the Pleiades, causing a lot of tension. But at the same time, it is, like I said, these squares, when you're talking about galactic astrology or star seeds, it keeps us in our lane, right? It keeps us in alignment with what we're supposed to do. And it's not easy, but it's like training in some ways. So let's go back a little bit to this morning. We're going to see that if we pop over to here real quick, do that. We're going to see here that just real quick, with the asteroids in a way that you can actually see everything. We see that, where's Gemini? Asteroid Ceres, still retrograde, is in Gemini. Remember, she is the goddess of the grain. She is the goddess of agriculture. She represents like the actual material unfolding of Gaia as an organism and as a planet, and all the processes within her. And in Gemini, I mean, even the planet is working with the dialectic right now and the balance of power, right? And the balance of mind in a lot of ways, and the balance of consciousness, because that's in Gemini where we first become, in that third house, we first become conscious that we are separate from everything else. That is that first realization in Gemini in the third house. So she's retrograde, and the first real connection with that Aries moon is right here, right before it meets Chiron. So there's protection here, very much so. And at the same time, the moon is in a sextile with Saturn in Aquarius as well. So making a sextile to Saturn, but then in a sextile also to Ceres over here in Gemini. So Aries moon making a sextile to two air signs, okay? There's protection here. There is this influx of spiritual energy in some ways into each of us, right? That we're getting this wind that's kind of just gently blowing over us and around us and through us. And it's in a way that is kind of, we know that it's there, but it's not completely influencing us like in its entirety, right? It's like blowing past us. It's like your wind chimes moving around, or your weather vane, starting to spin or something. There is an acknowledgement of this influx of spiritual energy, but it's in a way that we're still we're not being fully engaged yet with that, just enough to know, but not giving us more than we can handle. And this sextile to Saturn is this opportunity here to really find our anchor into those representations that we are meant to grow into, right? In terms of a society, in terms of the human collective, of the global population of planet Earth, moving into the evolution of its collective consciousness. Saturn is sitting in and providing the scaffolding and the backbone, and it's like, I've talked about this before, it's like the rebar that's all around your shelter out in the desert. It is anchoring it down, and it's representing very preformed examples of what we could be, right? And so it really depends on what example you are aligning yourself with that will find that structure and security and a sense of authority, because it's Saturn, and it's part of, you know, the unfolding of the fractal geometry of life, right? This is time in this dimension does, you know, it's an illusion at the higher realms and the higher densities, but in this moment it does have its cycles. And, you know, time is the sand sifting through the hourglass. It's again a closed system in a lot of ways. When we can plug into those examples into some sort of preformed mental archetype of what we could be, who we could be, how we could be, we can invest that into this influx of something very new and subtle, something that we barely realize is there within us, about our own identity. So, and Ceres too, right? Sextile to Ceres as well, that is starting to, this is where I feel like the seismic activity is really related to this internalized experience. So deeper within the earth, there is now a shifting happening, a shift against an imbalance that is happening. And again, we can feel it. It's just something that's blowing past us that we know is there, and we see it evidenced in some other mechanism outside of us, but it's not fully realized. And it's because we are still at this point in Aries, right? In this point in Aries with the moon, we still feeling it's still kind of fresh. We're still kind of new and fresh, right? We haven't even fully released yet what we're releasing, but we're now getting a sense of what's coming within us, what's growing, the potential to grow within us. So we can invest this, right? We can harmonize with where Saturn and Ceres are, which is one, anchoring into where we're going in terms of what we are aligning ourselves with, and also to an opportunity to really feel into how the changes are going to manifest later down the road outside of us in the actual Earth grid herself. That's going to be, you know, Ceres is going to come back over this point in, you know, at the end of eclipse season, almost. It's going to be more like the equinox, the spring equinox, or the March equinox. Ceres will be coming back over this point again around March in its directness. And, you know, February, March, and April, things are... oh, it's so good. There's so much more. And so right now it's really subtle, but we have to be able to anchor into these, you know, the actual scaffolding. We have to anchor into the setup of the rebar in time and space that is showing us where we can go, who we can grow into. And that is giving us a lot of opportunities to then kind of reconcile and move out in a new direction in a harmonious way. Very subtle, but also very much, if we have the mechanisms to measure, we know that it's there and all the potential of what we could be. Now, from here is where we bring in Chiron into the mix. So this was overnight again. So we come into the morning here, and what we're going to find almost exactly at the same time is that we see that Venus is in a square directly with Chiron. Venus in direct square with Chiron, and the moon pretty much coming right into conjunction with Chiron. And so the feeling is much more the individual feeling, right? Our own emotional landscape and the way that we kind of interact with the world around us, how we navigate through things, feeling based, right? How we feel about it. It's so much more... it's so much more connected to the struggle of keeping our attention and our peripheral vision just as intact as our direct line of sight. We want to see the full picture of who we are and who we could be, right? And concentrate our attention there, as opposed to getting pulled off track by the trigger of staying attached to the wounded healer version of ourselves. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be acknowledging that. And I think, in fact, with the moon meeting Chiron overnight like this, in a square directly to Venus, it's important that we see these parts of ourselves. It's important that we acknowledge the places that we revert back to an old identity of who we are that was based off of an incompleteness or not really well, incomplete in the way that we are still trying to heal ourselves by healing that same dynamic in other people and not doing the work on ourselves, right? It's okay to come to an awareness of this and to feel it. I think it's important to feel what that's like. Now, the square to Venus at this moment that happened, both Chiron and the moon, is important to acknowledge because it is also challenging us to stay in attunement to the universal rhythm, right? The Sabian symbol of 9 degrees Capricorn is an angel carrying a harp. And now remember, I talked about how much we are being surrounded and influenced in a positive way. We're being given tools, we're being given guidance, we're being, it's just like our own cheerleading teams in some ways are here, and they are vibrating so strongly in some ways that it's really helping us to align with that same resonance, right? Just like with music, when you are in resonance or in harmony, you know it, and when it's in dissonance, you also know it, and it's measurable. This Venus in Capricorn, again, it's coming through our very physical nature and what we value and what's valuable to us in our material life. So how we feel in our 5 senses, and I would even argue energetically, not so much emotionally, but energetically, and our connection energetically to each other, to the matrix as a whole, and to the new earth that is coming through, right? The new earth that is coming through, that Saturn very much is anchoring into our options, whatever they are, for us. And we know where we stand each individually, I hope. This is really challenging us to stay in alignment with the whole, and doing it through our relationships, doing it through those aspects of our life that are valuable to us, that allow us to harmonize, things that are beautiful, things that allow us to feel secure and safe in the physical world. That's, Venus appeases her senses and she draws towards her. She's magnetizing towards her what it is that is the object of her desire. And in this case, with Venus and Capricorn, the desire, it really is about what we are building together, right? What is the container that holds all of us in a very material way? What provides a sense of authority and power as well with Capricorn? This is about being in alignment to the universal or divine resonance. And the square is really about the test in terms of being able to hold our attention on who we are individually, without getting pulled off track, and feeling into that dissonance. I think that's really important. I think that's an important moment here, and this square is really highlighting that dissonance big time. And the best thing to do with a square is just lean into it and be like, that's uncomfortable. Let's see what happens next, and what I learn, what new perspective I've gathered, what has grown as a result of that discomfort. And then from here, the moon passed to this point, right? This is still last night. So moon passes this point, and then this morning comes into a quincunx with Mars and Scorpio. And Mars really wants to be the hero right now, and is doing so out of a legitimate and very authentic urge to be in communion with others, right? And again, we've talked about Mars and Scorpio. It's intense sexuality, intense drive to really get to the bottom of the relationship, of what's going on under the surface. There's a certain amount of bravery, but also too, we know that Mars is the agent of the tower. So we also know that there's not a lot of forethought before action. It's just acting on one's sense of identity. And so Mars really wants to be the hero, save the drowning person right now, because there is a sense of responsibility for each other, based on the fact that just acting out of love, out of principle even, is important and it's valuable, and we have a responsibility to that. But again, the quincunx between the moon and Mars of Aries and Scorpio is the inconjunct, or the fact that these two frequencies don't fit normally into a neat geometric pattern at all. And so it's the 5/12, right? It's the 5 out of 12, which is a 150-degree angle that rules or represents the quincunx. So while Mars, and we really want to act on it, the other territory of Mars is Aries, and what we're feeling is this real strong, drive and urge within each of us to really centralize ourselves, to really get ourselves centralized and in a position where our ego consciousness is able to kind of like pull in all of these like really strong but animalistic drives. Like there's a lot of desire and potency in Aries in terms of the individual, and so this is a moment where we pull it all together and centralize ourselves so that we're not just being thrown around by our own impulses in every given moment, very animalistically, or very much like a child, a young individual, right? And so how do we do this? How do we make sense of this? How do we transmute this energy? Well, that's exactly what we have to do. We have to transmute it. So there's a sense of wanting to the agent that is acting on our own identity and subjective experience. Mars, here is our tower moment. It's like we have to, in the face of, trying to save something that can't actually be saved, even though we feel responsible to a certain extent, maybe what it is we're saving ourselves by being able to masterfully centralize our own subjective experience within, so that we are ready for what this may actually represent down the road, right? With Mars, wanting to save the drowning person, right? Being the hero. We have to actually like make sure that we ourselves are able to handle that responsibility. And the quincunx is showing that these are different focuses. And so to transmute that is a really powerful tool, I think, for where we're going. So that's happening. I mean, that was this morning. So as soon as, like, for me, like waking up 5:30, 6 a.m., this was right there in the midst of my meditation. So now Venus is now in the first Lyran starseed location of 9 to 10 degrees of Capricorn. And what it's going to do is, if we pop over to this chart again, we'll see that right here we have Pallas Athena is also in a Lyran starseed location in 10 degrees Pisces, moving direct, right? This is our strategy. This is the strategy of war, right? Our strategy in war. This is the goddess of wisdom, Athena, right? She's got the owl. What's the owl's name, if you remember, right? There's a name. Why do I want to say, is it Bilbo? I mean, it's not Bilbo, but it's Bubo. I think that's what it is. Anyway, she's got the owl of wisdom, Pallas Athena. So strategy in war and wisdom in this Lyran aspect. And so Venus over in Capricorn right here, you can see making a direct sextile, both of them in resonant Lyran positions, okay? So there is something to be said for trusting ourselves, trust in each other, being willing to hold out our hand and receive, because we are not afraid of that which is being offered, and that we trust ourselves and have a certain amount of fearlessness about our ability to handle this realm, that we can offer our, hold out the hand in order to receive something. And at the same time, this is an opportunity to invest a strategy that has us really mastering the spiritual realm in terms of our activity, right? We've talked about the siddhis before, the Vedic, or in terms of the Vedic tradition or Hinduism or yoga and those types of, meditation and practices. The siddhis are those types of, the psychic powers and the levitation and all the magic stuff that is a byproduct of your spiritual awakening and your journey. And so part of this degree here is having to pursue this journey with some intention and with some mastery, and to like break through the what obscures us from making that direct connection. This is about our strategy that we are meant to employ. And then this is really powerful today, this connection, because it is really giving us the ability to the fearlessness of the Lyrans, the sense of leadership that comes along with the Lyran aspect, and a genuine, authentic enjoyment of being in this third dimensional experience, right? This is one of the most important aspects, I think, of the Lyran starseed, is bringing that to the table. Yes, the ability to fearlessly push your limits and to do things that maybe make people afraid, other people might be afraid to do, is very much wrapped up in this aspect today as well, very strongly. And so this is, and we're talking about the divine feminine energy. We're talking about Venus. We're talking about Pallas Athena, these goddesses, right, that represent the different aspects of the feminine, divine feminine. It's really about, in our life, can we extend our hand in the larger social context? Do we have the ability to be fearless and to trust ourselves, and to have the responsibility and the authority to step into a position of power in order to actually master these particular practices, or to really pursue what it is that we're trying to pursue, which is our attainment of our full spiritual nature in a material form, right? It's to achieve fifth density in the third dimension, as far as I can tell right now. Now, not everybody, I'm sure lots of people have different ways of explaining this, but this is very important, and it's a sextile, right? So again, it's an investment we have to make. But we have to act on it. We can't just like expect it to be here for us. And we have to actually act on these things. We have to pursue these things. We have to put out our hand with a sense of fearlessness in our relationships and what is valuable to us in order to receive something. But we can't do that without like having this a sense of security within ourselves. This is strong, very strong root chakra activation too as well. So when we move past that, what we find here, where are we? We're going to move past this, because this then comes into, we find that later today that the sun is going to have a direct square to Jupiter. So I just talked about this as well, because this is a big Pleiadian activation. Both of these positions, be them Pleiadian, are still not resonant with the Pleiades. So when you have these positions in your natal chart, for instance, or your progressed chart, they are still denote these starseed origins, but they provide a challenge to your current ego consciousness. So both of these positions are not in accordance to the Pleiadian signature, but are very much aligned with it. And we're about to learn something about some discipline here. Now, the degree that the sun is at in Scorpio is a real challenge to take a peak experience that we got with over the weekend especially, and apply it to our everyday life, and to take the light of our illuminated soul and actually be able to put it into action in our everyday life. I just talked about it, right? Fifth density in third dimensional form. So this is a challenge, right? This is about, you've heard the inspiring sermon. Now it's time to go home and actually put it into use, put it into action. The square to Jupiter is these squares, sun square Jupiter, as long as we are not getting too big, right? Because you have these two very powerful, you have the sun, which is like the center of our expression and our ego and where we are consciously being ourselves, and Jupiter, which is endless expansion of resources, and the meaning, right? There's so much meaning with Jupiter, and the expansion of that meaning, the broad horizons, larger than life. it's in the 0 point of Aquarius, right? So it's been really about the thunderbolts that Jupiter has been throwing at us that are getting us, back. Here's the point, right? Opening the third eye, giving us insight, giving us sight, giving us gnosis into the power of our evolved consciousness, which is the highest version of Aquarius, and innovating, right? And specifically our resources and advocating. It just hasn't been like the most comfortable, right? Because it's just like thunderbolt after thunderbolt getting thrown at us to get us disciplined. And in this case, to really, not feed into the passionate experience of it. There's the square to the sun, because that is our passion, but to teach from a place of deep wisdom. So the square can be an incredible aspect when we don't get too big on both sides of it, right? I mean, as long as our egos are not like fully out of control in this situation, we can really utilize this to really gain something and to grow and to really expand on something very creative, right? We can expand on our own expression, but it requires some discipline and requires some humility to get something out of this. And the challenge really is to bring what we've discovered in the realm of Scorpio to our, it's not enough to be like, oh, I'm awake. We actually have to apply that to everyday life. And part of that is our ability in this instance to stay very focused and singularly focused on what it means to teach from past experiences rather and teach something very deep that we've gone through from past experiences to those who haven't quite gotten to that point yet. So even though the square and the Pleiadian nature is so much in the feels of it in a very material way, right? It's connecting to the grid of the planet. It's connecting to the very physical, energetic nature of all life, right? The ability to connect to the vibration of each other and animals and plants and all of it, right? This is the Pleiadian nature. So going into a place of deep investigation to connect to the thunderbolt that ultimately destroys the tower, those types of things they run counter or provide a challenge to the Pleiadian nature, because the nature is just to be, right? It's just to be in union. It's just to be directly linked up to the energetics of the world around you. And so to go into investigation, to go into teaching mode, to expand on things into the meaning of them, again, is not the territory of the Pleiadians, but it's still very Pleiadian. So we're learning something really important today, and specifically learning how to manage the resources that we're given in order to actually find our voice through this the application of what we've learned and discovered into everyday life. I mean, this is really, we have to start really addressing this because it's not enough to just, that Princess of Cups, it's just not enough to fantasize about it and to feel about it. That's a big part of it, but we actually have to start putting some things into action, or at the very least, we have to start applying what we've learned about ourselves to our own growth and our own healing. That's a big part of it as well. So the square today is actually keeping us, like I said, in our lane, even if it's uncomfortable. And then from there, the moon comes into a quincunx with another 150-degree angle with Mercury in Scorpio. Now this is actually quite remarkable. So again, these Aries Scorpio quincunxes are really about how it doesn't seem at first to really fit when we focus on ourselves versus what we produce together, right? Those things don't really fit, even though they're both ruled by Mars ultimately. Mercury in Scorpio is now starting to really we're really starting to see, and we're really starting to conceptualize what it means to have faith, and what it means to be in communion, and how that creates faith as well, because we have evidence based on our own investigation of what that actually means. And so again, we're working with ourselves right now with the moon in Aries, right? We're working on the potential and the potency of what we could be in Aries, and we're feeling all of that, right? And so sometimes there's some lack of patience here, because it's just Aries, it's the spark, right? You're not really thinking about it, you're not thinking about anything else or anybody else, you are just in the moment of being. And Mercury it's like there's some trickster energy going on here. There's some really strong trickster energy, and a specific, like, kind of a wink, like, I got a secret to tell you, right? That's what it feels like. I got a secret to tell, and it's a good secret. And it's like, I kind of figured out how to create from within. You know what I mean? Like, I saw something, and now I'm bringing it out to the awareness. While we are, and it's specifically in terms of our reconnection to source, and how that comes through our connection and our emotional connection with each other, right? Our communion with each other, our communion with source, our communion with our higher self. We start to have a faith, and we're now starting to really conceptualize that. The Quincunx here, again, our moment of adjustment, how to transmute ourselves is, what do we do with that when we feel so empty? And when we feel so empty inside, when we feel like a lack of potency, like, what do we do within ourselves to address what feels like a lack of potency, and in order to get to a point? And that's that moment of transmute. And this is going to be by the end of today, right? That moment is going to show us so much. What we do to adjust ourselves in that moment where we feel a lack of potency, we're going to realize that it all is generated within us, and we're really going to feel it. And as a result of that, it will be like, here, see, I told you. Mercury is really giving us, is really giving us something right now, is letting us kind of peer into something that we otherwise wouldn't necessarily be able to see. And that adjustment right there, just having that awareness for a moment, is enough that it's going to give us the ability to really cultivate some potency when we otherwise maybe feel kind of separated, where we feel like we don't have any potency. If we feel like empty, right? And we want to withdraw, and we might withdraw. And I feel like that, again, that's a big part of this. We have to start kind of pulling in a little bit. And this is, pulling into our practices, getting very clear with ourselves, and being ready to release a lot of stuff. But part of that too is that we have to get into the deeper way. And that little wink from Mercury just keeps popping up in my head right now. He's just like, I have a secret, I have a secret to tell from my electrical well. I'm leaving out all the whistles and bells. If you know that song, that would be really cool. I'm just curious if that is familiar to anyone. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. So if you're interested in a reading or energetic support for your process, you can book through catalystenergies.net. You can also email me if you're interested in the eclipse cycle reading. It's the looking at your chart through the whole rest of the eclipse season, which is from starting Friday, and it ends in May with the lunar eclipse in May. So that's $99. You get 90 minutes of reading time, and we go through the whole thing. So you can also email me if you're interested in that, and we can get that set up. And what else? Let's see here. I feel like there's something else that's like hanging, and I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I think it's fine. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for being here. I love you guys. It's Monday. Happy Monday. We are doing great. So I'm curious to know, share what your practices are going to be, if you have any, what you're going to do to really allow yourself to get into that deeper portion of yourself. What is it that you can do to actually, you can actually facilitate this letting go, right? Letting go of something within ourselves. You know, a good practice is to give up something, right? To sacrifice something in order to purify, right? So fasting is a great way, but there are lots of other ways that you can, if that's not going to work for you, to bring that about. So we can also problem solve if you're really interested in figuring something out. And, you know, I do these like micro readings as well. So that can be part of it. If you want to do a micro reading and kind of, you know, get an idea of how to address the next couple days, what kind of practices to bring into your life. And yeah, have a great Monday. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the transmission, and I look forward to it. God bless you. Have a great day.